Today, we'll be answering the internet's most frequently asked questions about cyanobacteria. I'm Morgan Sass, a lab assistant at the Lilly Center for Lakes and Streams.
And I'm Matt Burlingame, Assistant Director of Research at the Lilly Center. Cyanobacteria is a big focus of our research here. Let's answer the most common questions about cyanobacteria. Question number 1. What is cyanobacteria? Cyanobacteria is bacteria. It's composed of some different pigments like chlorophyll A, phycobilin, and phycoerythrin. And these pigments allow cyanobacteria to photosynthesize like algae, and they also help produce its blue-green color.
What is cyanobacteria bloom? A cyanobacteria bloom is what happens when cyanobacteria reproduces rapidly and causes a massive amount of algae.
All right. Question number 3. What is cyanobacteria made of? Cyanobacteria aren't algae, they're bacteria, and they are actually prokaryotes, and they do not have a nucleus or membrane-bound organelles, which make them a little bit different than algae, green algae, which are true algae.
Is cyanobacteria algae? Well, as Matt said, it's actually a bacteria. So we call it an algae because it sort of photosynthesizes like algae and it's small like algae. But it's actually a bacteria.
All right, Morgan, I'm going to do something crazy, go out of order here. So is cyanobacteria bad? Cyanobacteria is a naturally occurring organism in our lakes. So it's supposed to be there, so it's not necessarily bad. But like a lot of things, too much of it can be bad. So if there's a bloom, and it produces toxin, then the cyanobacteria toxin can be detrimental to pets and people at certain levels.
I'll follow your lead. How to identify cyanobacteria? So cyanobacteria has a couple different things. It'll look sort of like a paint spill on the water. It'll be real thin and sort of floaty, and if you stir a stick around in it, it'll kind of stick to the stick, sort of like paint would. It can also sometimes create a bad smell, or sometimes we'll see fish kills that go along with it.
All right, next question. What causes cyanobacteria? All right, so cyanobacteria, again, is naturally occurring, but what can cause a bloom, a lot of warm days in a row, so high temperatures extended for a couple of days, high sunlight concentrations, excess nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus in the lake, even interactions with different organisms can cause a cyanobacterial bloom.
Is cyanobacteria photosynthetic? Yes. So cyanobacteria has chlorophyll in it, and that makes it able to harness the sun's energy to make energy of its own.
If I can pull these apart. Oh, is cyanobacteria a blue-green algae? Cyanobacteria is called a blue-green algae, even though it's not algae, it's bacteria. As we said before, it's called blue-green because of the combination of pigments in the cyanobacteria can make it blue-green color. And because it photosynthesizes, and it's small, and it's in the water, we call them algae, even though they're not algae, they're bacteria.
Why cyanobacteria is bacteria? So it's actually a completely different classification. Even though it behaves a lot like algae, cyanobacteria is actually smaller than algae most times, and it doesn't contain some of the same organelles, which are sort of like organs inside the body.
What cyanobacteria eats? So they don't swim around the lake and eat stuff like a fish does, but cyanobacteria consume nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus and some trace minerals, and that's what they need to grow, besides using energy from sunlight to photosynthesize and then taking up carbon dioxide and water in that process to create food to build their own biomass.
What cyanobacteria looks like? So I actually study cyanobacteria under the microscope, and it can take a few different forms. We'll often see microcystis in small little circles, or we'll see some filamentous algae, which means they kind of look like a string of cells.
It's my last one, Morgan.
Oh dear.
Is cyanobacteria bad for dogs? It can be. Again, as we said a couple of times, it's a naturally occurring organism, but at the right concentrations, cyanobacteria can be harmful to pets. It typically affects dogs because a lot of times when you're not playing fetch with your Labrador Retriever cat and she's not chasing a tennis ball out of the lake. But dogs go in the lake, and I know my dog swims around, it's always biting at the water, and when it gets out, what's the dog do? He licks himself off to get the water off them, and they end up ingesting a lot of water, and then that, therefore, if there's toxin present from the cyanobacteria, that can cause harm to the pets.
All right, and I'll finish it out. Does my lake have cyanobacteria? Yeah, all lakes have cyanobacteria, just like all lakes have algae. But unless there's a bloom or otherwise high levels, we're not going to see any toxin or harm from it. So as long as it's not in a bloom, it should be fine. Speaking of blooms, if you want our weekly toxin updates, they come out every Friday, and you can find them at lakes.grace.edu, and they'll send you an email telling you a little bit about the lakes you live on.
Thanks for joining us for our Autocomplete FAQs.